What's up, y'all? So today we're going to be designing out a suburban homestead design, and we're going to be assuming that this lot size for this piece of property is around 1/3 of an acre. Okay, we're going to make the lot dimensions 100 foot by 145 foot, and we're going to lay out a whole homestead design. What can you achieve with a homestead in the suburbs? You can produce a ton of food in the suburbs, even in a small place. And so I'm going to lay this out the way I would design it. This isn't the end all be all. I don't know everything. However, this would be the way I would design or lay out a suburban homestead design. Now let's assume that your driveway is right here and you've got your house structure right here. Okay. Home. All this is going to be front yard. Let's assume you've got a fence somewhere right here. And so all this is front yard up here. And we're just going to assume right now that you're just leaving that normal landscaping, normal front yard with the lawn, okay? And now we've got all of this to work with. Let's assume you've got a covered patio. Let's do right here. Covered patio. Now at this point, you've got to figure out what all do you want to achieve, what all do you want to accomplish on your homestead. Because this is a smaller space, we're going to be limited on some of the things that we can do, especially around the livestock. But if you've got a covered patio here, I like to start out with what I would call a kitchen garden. And so these would be raised beds that you're going to place around the covered patio and in that area. Because what you want is you want to put the things that you're going to need to access the most right next to the home. If you've got a kitchen garden with herbs and lettuce and kale and maybe a tomato plant, some cucumbers, some different things like that, you're going to want to put those raised beds there because you want to be able to be here in the kitchen and walk straight out from your patio and just harvest what you need. That's what people call a kitchen garden. That's going to be your primary focus here on a small homestead in the suburbs. So what we're going to do, let's say you've got a little walkway out this way. That's going to take you out to your yard walkway. What I would do is build you some raised beds right out onto the walkway. Now I know these look a little small. They're not perfectly, sized out according to this, the dimensions here. But this would allow you to walk straight out to your little raised bed gardens. And I would use the, what's called the I think they're called birdie raised beds. Epic Gardening sells those. And they're metal, they'll last forever, really high quality. Now you're going to have to fill these raised beds, and actually before you lay these raised beds down, figure out what grass you have growing already in your backyard. One very popular grass in the United States especially is called Bermuda grass. You don't want to lay these raised beds right over top of that Bermuda grass because that stuff is the devil. It will come up those raised beds and infiltrate your entire raised bed, and I promise you are going to be very upset because that stuff is the devil. So what I would do first, before you actually lay down the raised bed and then fill it, is I would lay down a really thick piece of landscape fabric. I'll put a link down in the description for what I typically use. And so you're going to lay that down underneath where you're planning on putting the raised bed. That's going to help kill off the Bermuda grass or anything else that you have growing there. Now you could kind of till under each area as well to help terminate it a little bit, but that won't fully terminate Bermuda grass. So we're going to get those birdie raised beds, or you can build them with wood, and you can lay down that landscape fabric, or you could do really thick pieces of cardboard, like get some cardboard boxes and lay down like multiple layers of cardboard underneath this raised bed. Again, we're just trying to terminate the grasses and stuff that are growing underneath it. Now you would want enough space in between these raised beds for one to be able to walk in between them, but also to be able to weed eat or get a mower through. So you don't want to be crammed in there. And depending upon how many you want to do, you could run them all the way out to here. And this is going to give you enough space to be able to have a really nice kitchen garden, plant all those fun crops. You could even throw in like a squash plant here, a couple of cherry tomato plants, maybe some slicer tomatoes, all the herbs, some onions, some green onions, some mint, all that fun stuff. And so we're going to build the kitchen garden here. We got our walkway coming out. And then let's say the rest of this, maybe you still wanted a place for the kids to play or the dog to run around. This whole area here could just be your backyard grass. So whatever you got growing there. Oops, I misspelled that there. Backyard lawn. And this would be an area where the kids can still play, the dog can run around. So you still got a good chunk of space there to have a yard, because I know most of y'all will probably still want a yard. You want this to be aesthetically pleasing. You don't want to fill the whole thing with food. Now you may want to do that, and you can still use that area. So we've got our kitchen garden here. Now when it comes to the house, more than likely, if you have gutters coming off the back of the house here, you could put some rain tanks to catch rainwater. Rain tank. And this would allow you to capture water off your homestead, off the roof, and you could use that for irrigation, okay? Now you can obviously still use the spigot, but this is just another way to create some security on your homestead, especially when it comes to water. Now I'm not going to tell you how to set up these rain tanks. It's pretty simple. There's a ton of resources online on how to actually install those with a first flush and all that. So that's an option. You don't have to do that. Obviously that does cost money, but you could put the rain tanks in on your property. So now that you've got these raised beds set up, the reason I'm promoting raised beds is because they're aesthetically pleasing. They're easy to work with. But we are going to do a plot back here that you could grow some larger crops. But all the stuff you're going to want to have quick access to right outside of your home will be the majority of what you're accessing with the kitchen garden. Now back here, we could do a small plot, an in-ground garden plot. Now again, you may move this around according to your shaded areas. So I don't know if you may not have any trees. If you don't have any trees, then that's great, because then it's a little bit easier to work with in regards to the design. But when you're thinking through, if you had a big oak tree over here in the corner, obviously you're not going to put the in-ground garden plot right there, because you need to get 6 to 8 hours of sunlight for a garden to successfully grow. There are some crops that grow well in the shade, but the vast majority do not. So in this in-ground garden plot, this is where you could grow some bigger crops like sweet potatoes, winter squash. And so you can lay this out with 30-inch wide beds with a 1.5 foot or an 18-inch walkway. And this is where you could grow some of those larger crops if you wanted to. This would help you create a little bit more food security with storage crops. Onions, garlic, sweet potatoes, winter squash, regular potatoes, all that fun stuff. I would probably put a larger in-ground plot back here in order to do that. Now, I've got a video that I'm going to link at the end on how to establish an in-ground garden plot. That way you can watch that a little bit further on how to successfully do that, especially if you've got Bermuda and all that kind of invasive grass growing back here on that plot. You can watch that at the end. Again, I'll put a link for that. Now for these garden plots here, they actually make arches. Like if you get the birdie raised beds, you can look around, but they actually make these really cool arches that go over and connect to raised beds. And what you could grow in those arches, you could trellis a cherry tomato plant up them, or a cucumber plant, or some pole beans. And those would actually grow over the arches, and it could actually make a really cool just aesthetic appeal. Is when you're walking under that, you can not only just reach up and harvest what you need, but it would make it cool and pretty. So that's how I would do this. Now when you're filling these garden beds, you're going to need a good amount of compost or soil. So you're going to want to get with a local nursery, someone that's making good quality compost, or they're importing good quality compost, which that's what most of them are, they're not making it. But I would ask them some questions about that compost. Before you buy it, go put your hands in it, smell it. Does it stink? Does it smell earthy? Is there trash in it? You can also ask for a soil test on that compost. A lot of them should have that. As long as it smells good, it's rich in organic matter, it doesn't have trash in it, that's what I would fill these raised beds with. Now, to limit your expense on filling these, because this can get costly, raised beds do, they're expensive. You could put logs, you could put leaves, you could put a lot of stuff in the bottom half of these raised beds. And then the rest of the top you could fill with the actual compost or soil that you're buying. And that will eliminate you having to get as many loads of compost, because it can get pretty pricey. Now, obviously, when you're ordering that compost from that supplier, they're probably going to have to dump it in your driveway, or they can dump it in your yard here. So you're going to have some labor hauling that compost in with a wheelbarrow and all that fun stuff. But that's what I would do. I would start out kind of filling each one with some logs, any organic matter that you can fill the bottom of it with. But again, we want to leave at least the top foot to top 2 feet of that raised bed with actual soil. Okay, if you're getting some good quality compost into these garden raised beds, those plants should perform pretty well, because they're going to have a lot of the core nutrients that they need to thrive. So now that we've got our rain tank set up, we've got our kitchen garden here, we've got our in-ground plot over here, and then we just got our backyard lawn. Maybe you've got like a little swing set or something for the kids. Just however you want to lay this out. But that's what I'm allocating that area for. Now let's start talking about some other things. Let's talk about some perennials. And so this is where it gets fun. I love perennials because you can grow a lot of fruit on a small homestead plot like this. So let's use the fences. Let's assume that you've got a fence running around here. We're going to use the edges of the property to grow fruit. And so let's put a row here of blackberries. Let's put some blueberries down here. You could throw in a goji berry plant. All these are going to need trellising. You could even throw in some raspberries. These don't take very long to get established. And so those would be some ones where I would use my fence line or the side of my fence, because it's already with that fence, it's already going to kind of give you a trellis that you can work off of. And then you can plant those right along the side, so they're not taking up a lot of space. Again, just make sure this area gets plenty of sunlight. But those are some of the berries that I would plant right along there. Now on the other side, you could plant figs. You could do a row along the fence here. You may need to back it or space it out a little bit from the fence, since it is a tree, it's going to want to grow out like that. So we've got figs. That's a great one, depending upon your climate. But you also can grow some different types of fruit trees over here. And this is where I would grow mainly dwarf varieties. You don't want to get a large fruit tree. The dwarf variety, hence the name, it's going to grow small. You're in a small space, so you don't want to get super large fruit tree varieties. So we're going to do dwarf fruit trees. You can do apples. You can do peaches. Just whatever your family like. You can go to starkbros.com. They sell fruit trees. That's a great source or a great resource to get fruit trees and fig trees. But again, just research the zone you're in and what's going to grow well before you actually plant those. And then I would actually till up the area where you're wanting to plant those trees, amend it with some good compost. You could use the same compost you got here, and then you'd plant those. Best time to plant fruit trees and things of that nature generally is in the fall. The next best time is going to be early spring. And so you can order a lot of that stuff from starkbros.com. They make fantastic. They've just got a ton of options to choose from when it comes to perennials. But you can plant more than that, but I'm just giving you some options here. If you could plant kind of a row of that over here, you could still be able to get in with your lawnmower, you could still get through this area, but that would allow you to use the edges to produce fruit on your property. Now the other thing you could do, you could put this back here to produce honey. is we could do a beehive. And that's one thing I would 100% do if I'm in the suburbs, because I'm just limited on what I can do. Now, the other thing I'd recommend, obviously, is get some chickens. You can get chickens in the city, just don't get a rooster. Roosters are what cause the problems. They're the ones that are loud. The hens are generally pretty quiet, and you shouldn't have an issue. A lot of people in the suburbs get laying hens. In this type of context, because you don't have a lot of space, you're going to need to build out just a permanent chicken coop. And depending upon where you put it, you could put it back here, but we're going to put it right here because it's going to give us easy access. Chicken coop. This would be a permanent chicken coop, and you could lay this out to where you could do deep bedding. Part of this would be the coop where they go at night, and then inside here could be a covered chicken run area. You can look online for designing chicken coops. There's a million options. But I would lay it out somewhere where it's relatively close, because you're going to be accessing that every day. You're going to be opening those chickens up in the morning, closing them up at night, feeding them, getting them the water. So this is going to give you really ease of access to not only the chicken coop, but also your kitchen garden. Now with this, again, you can do the deep bedding, so then you can make compost with the chicken coop. So that leads us into the next thing, is you could do your compost bays over here. Let's say you make 3 compost bays. Compost. You got 3 bays of compost to work with, so you can compost those kitchen scraps. You can compost your leaves on the property. Let's say maybe you got some oak trees up here in the front or whatever. And so you can make good quality compost that you can then in turn go back on the garden plots. So we've got our compost. Got rain tanks to catch some water. We got our chicken coop for eggs. And also, you know, the great part about having the chicken coop close to these gardens is anytime you're cropping out a bed or moving stuff, you can just throw it in the chicken coop. Gives them some extra food from the garden plots. They'll really love it. And so this is kind of the way I would set it up. So, you know, you're going to be limited on being able to do any type of meat. But the one thing I would do, if you created space for it and you feel like you have the space, is you could raise rabbits. They're super easy. A lot of people that do raise them say that it's very similar to like raising they taste similar to chicken. I've never raised rabbits. There are some resources online on how to actually do that. But let's say you wanted to raise some rabbits. You could do that, again, along the edges. I would probably put it somewhere here, maybe along the back here. Let's just say rabbits back here. Rabbits for meat. Again, I'm just putting it there because I kind of run out of space here, but wherever you feel like you want to put that for the rabbits, you could do that. They don't take up a lot of space. They literally just, they eat green material, and they convert it into meat. Pretty incredible. So this is the way I would lay out a suburban homestead design. You got your compost. Compost and kitchen scraps, then go on the garden, and then your material from the garden that you're not eating, you can then throw to the chickens, and then they're going to in turn give you eggs for your family. You've got your large garden plot here to grow some of your storage crops. You still got a big backyard lawn for the kids and the dogs to run around. You got rabbits for meat. You've got berries. You've got some different fruit varieties, and this is going to create a lot of self-sufficiency on a very small plot of land. Again, we're just at 1/3 of an acre. If you're on something larger, let's say you're wanting to see a 5-acre homestead plot design, I'll put a link to that video here. And next to that, I'm going to add the video on how to actually design a large garden plot. So you've got 2 of those videos to watch. I would highly encourage you to go watch those now. If you found this video helpful, hit the like and subscribe button. We'll see you on the next one.